So I don't know if we're, I don't know if I'm pitching today, but yeah, the plan was just engage in a good conversation. So I did want to talk about the idea of starting small but thinking big. We've scaled quite a bit, and we ran into different challenges and everything else, getting to where we are today. So if I can help in any way, lessons learned, that kind of stuff, feel free to ask questions. So I'll start with background on me, and then I'll get into the product. So as the team mentioned, I did start Buyatab when I was 21. I was a student at SFU when Buyatab started. Today, we power some really big programs. We work with hundreds of brands. We work with brands in North America, in Europe, and now in Asia. And what we specifically do is we help brands sell their gift cards online. So if you went to the Whole Foods website today and you bought a gift, if you click to buy a gift card, it's our application that loads on their page to sell their card for them. We do that for hundreds of other brands. For brands you'd recognize would be like Tim Hortons, Four Seasons, Cineplex, The Keg, and many others. So many years ago, I started just with an idea, right? The idea was brands aren't really selling gift cards online. Let's build some software to help them sell their cards online. So luckily for me, that idea turned out to be a good idea. And when you have an idea and timing and everything else works out, it turns out to be a big opportunity, right? So if you're sitting with a big opportunity, these slides. So this slide is supposed to say opportunity versus resources. So just envision that, okay? So, so when you have a big idea, and it's a big opportunity, and you have limited resources. In my case, I was a student at SFU with not much money to start Buyatab, right? So the struggle is real. You have this large opportunity, which can be endless. You have limited resources. So the decisions you make are super important. And when you're building a software company, the result a lot of the times is technical debt. Right? So I know a lot of people don't like talking about technical debt. It's this like bad thing that people say is totally bad. And I'm here to talk kind of otherwise. So technical debt is bad. The actual definition of technical debt is, and I'll read it to you, technical debt is a concept in programming that reflects the extra development work that arises when code that is easy to implement in the short run is used instead of applying the best overall solution. So what does that mean? It means shortcuts. Right? So when you're building things and you're waiting for the clients are waiting for it, there's a tendency to want to do shortcuts, right? And the natural thought is shortcuts are bad, never do shortcuts. So here's the kind of controversial piece. Shortcuts can be good, you just gotta be careful. Because if you're not careful, you're gonna make the shortcuts anyway, you're just gonna like put them under the closet and not think about them, and that's worse. Right? So here's a diagram that luckily loaded on the screen. And it shows different points where you could be, right? I think if you think that you're going to build a program that is not going to have any technical debt, I think you're out to lunch a little bit. Every large company has technical debt, right? And that's just a fact, right? So the big thing is managing technical debt. So where do you want to be? You don't want to be here, because that's low opportunity, high technical debt, right? Here's okay, but you want to be above the line, right? Ideally, this is kind of like the unicorn, right? You want to be high opportunity, like no technical debt. And you're not going to get above that line if you make shortcuts and then pretend like you didn't do them, right? So get to where you want to get to, realize that you have opportunities to get to, and if you have to make a shortcut, that's okay, but realize and say, okay, I made that shortcut, now we got to go back, we got to fix it. Because if you make that shortcut naively, you're just kidding yourself, right? This is another slide that loaded fantastically well. It's really just the conclusion side. The big message I can tell you today is technical debt is bad, but if you're going to grow and you're going to grow quickly, you're going to accumulate technical debt. So if you're going to accumulate technical debt and you're going to do shortcuts when you have to, make sure they're calculated, because the worst thing you can do is do them and pretend like you didn't do them. So that's the 5 minutes on technical debt. I hope it's helpful, and I hope it's more helpful than the slides that loaded today. So I think there's like 3 minutes for questions. Yeah. Sure.
How did you get your
I'm supposed to repeat the question. So, how did we get our very first client? Great question. I would say we kind of faked it till we made it, right? We met with them and said, hey, we noticed you're not selling gift cards online. Why aren't you doing that? And they said, well, here's why. It'd be hard technically. We want a solution that does this. And we said, well, we do that, right? And then we went back and said, okay, now we do that. So that's like the very first client, right? I hope that helps.
It seems like the common cause of technical debt is usually poor planning. When you're implementing something that's a hot fix or something that's a patch or something that's just a short-term fix, it's usually poor planning. Do you have any tips for planning something so you can avoid technical debt?
I think hot fixes are going to happen, right? And you just don't want to get yourself in a position where you're doing hot fix after hot fix after hot fix, right? So if you are going to do a hot fix and you agree to it, then just make sure that you say, okay, well, we did do that, so now we got to go back to it, right? I know at Buyatab we implemented virtual machines, so if we do run into a situation where we need to point back, we can do that, right? And it's just, you're right, planning is important, but make sure that you are cognizant on, I think a problem people run into is they think that they're going to get to a point where they're never going to have to do hot fixes or they're never going to have to roll back, right? And just accept it. And if you do, don't be quiet about it. Say, we did that. Now, what do we do about that, right?
Wondering if you could provide an example, an anecdote from when you had to go into technical debt. You recognized that it was a trade-off, but you went with it anyway.
For sure. I won't name the client, but one of our really large clients asked us to do something, and they said, we're doing an RFP, you need to do this. And we did most of what they wanted us to do. And if we didn't agree to what they were asking for, we were not going to get the deal, right? And for us to build that piece of the application for them completely properly, it would have taken longer than it would have been to get them, to have them agree to using us. So we said, okay, well, we're going to sign them up, we're going to do this, we're going to have to do some shortcuts, but then as soon as they're live, let's go back, let's do it the right way, and let's make sure that those shortcuts we did, right, we correct them, right? Because the most difficult piece is doing the shortcut and then not going back, because then there's the next opportunity, right? So I hope that helps answer the question.
I'm really lucky with my tech startup that I have some senior developers that actually did this, and it's good.
Yeah.
And they tracked it in their own way, but perhaps for others to help them, it's a good presentation, but do you have any recommendations on how people can document it? Because I assume that's one of the key elements is documenting when you've done a technical debt or a shortcut, and then being able to refer back to it and makes it different.
For sure, right?
So what was your trick of documenting that, assuming you did?
I think you have to be just open about it, right? I think when a developer does do a shortcut, right, what they're wanting to do is be like, I didn't do that, or just hide it, right? But just be proud of it. Say, listen, I did this shortcut, and here's why I did it, right? And for the business, it made a ton of sense, right? So just make sure that you can articulate why you're doing these shortcuts, because if you're going to do a shortcut, it's not good. But the worst thing you can do is make a shortcut and then hide it, right? So stand in front of it and say, here's why, and would you have done it differently? And then often the answer is no. It's good that you did that, so now let's have you spend some time on correcting it. So documentation, but also just having that environment where it's okay to be vocal about things that you're not 100% proud of, and just say, here's something that I think I might have done incorrectly. So building that environment where you're not getting mad at them for doing that, and just encouraging people to say, hey, okay, I get it, you had to make that time in, but tell me, did you make any shortcuts? Okay, perfect, let's correct them.
But what tool did you use, particular tools?
Good question. I'm not on the tech side, so I don't know the specific tools, but I know they use different documentation tools for sure. Yeah. Perfect. Thanks, everyone, and sorry again for the cryptic slide.
Huge round of applause for Matias and his improv skills.